Okay, so what I've done is I bought an Arcade1Up cabinet a couple of weeks now. So I've built that cabinet, got it all running. Right now it's just a stock. It's got Mortal Kombat 1, 2 and Ultimate Mortal Kombat built in. And the plan is to remove all the buttons, remove the joysticks, replace all them with nice new, more upgraded version of it. And also to install a Raspberry Pi, put a 12-volt amp in there and get it running some MAME arcades and a few other little bits and bobs, see what I can do with that. And that's the plan. So let's move on to the next step and let's start this. Need for this build. So firstly, we're going to need a control board, and that will help it turn it to HDMI. And it's also got a power switch on, it's got an earth there, and you also get a little control panel that runs off that's inside the box underneath. You're going to be a Raspberry Pi 4GB of RAM. We've got the Raspberry Pi power pack. We've also got a 12-volt amp, and then we've got the button kit. So there's all the different buttons, that's all in there. And then we've also got a flicker case to put the Raspberry Pi into. And that doesn't need a fan, it just comes with a heatsink built in. And then we need the drill bit to drill the extra buttons that I'm going to need into the Arcade1Up cabinet. So that's what you need if you're interested. I'm going to put a link in the description with everything there. So this is in the UK, so you'll be able to just click on the links and purchase them if you're interested in doing this conversion yourself. So the next thing I want to do is we want to change these buttons and these joysticks, because the ones that come provided with the cabinet, they're not very good. So to do that, there's 4 screws, one here, one here, one here, and one here. So we're going to undo them, and then we are going to change all the buttons over. Nice and simple process. Now we're going to take this apart and get it straight back down to its bare wood. So the first thing we need to do is just unscrew the joysticks. Need to take them off and the clips, and then that will make this piece of plastic come off. We'll put that to one side. Then on the back we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 screws that need to come off, so we're just going to unscrew them now. Just place it carefully on here. And then that will bring these bad boys off. Now that comes down to this. Now this is your main board. So what we're going to do is we're going to unscrew these 4 screws here either side to get the joysticks off. We're going to take all these wirings off. We're actually going to unscrew these bits here, and then the buttons, you just pop the clips in and then they'll just pop straight out. So what we're going to do is we're going to take this all down to the bare wood. So what I've done now is I've just taken these 2 screws off here, and then I've disconnected all of these from the buttons, and there's like all the wiring with the 2 joysticks now all taken apart and all disassembled. So throw that there. This now leaves us with the speaker I should say. These are the on and off switches which we're not going to use. We're just going to cable tie them up and leave them in the cabinet. And all we're going to do now is just pop the buttons out, and what you do there is you just get the two clips, and then you just push down, and then the button will just come away. So what I'm going to do is now I'm going to take all the buttons off this, and we'll come back to it when I finish that. The board straight down to the bare metal. All the buttons have been removed. We've still got the on off switch and we've still got the volume switch, but they're disconnected, so they're just there now just to make the cabinet look good. Now what we do have to go in these bad boys is a new set of LED buttons, and they just basically plug straight into the LED, into the button, and then they'll go straight into the encoder, which are these here. Then the encoders, which are these little bad boys here, they come with a wire here that plugs from the encoder with a USB that goes into the back of your Raspberry Pi 4. So this is important. So from there, once we do that, we've also got a player 1 button and a player 2 button, which will go back in here. And also I've got 2 coin buttons, which are going to go underneath in the front of the cabinet, which we'll do later. And you can definitely tell the difference. These are the buttons I took out, really flimsy, no spring. the recoil back to them's not that good. These ones, nice and solid, and you can basically notice the difference. So what I'm going to do is now we are going to fit one of these. So red will be red, red this side, sorry, and blue this side. And all you basically do with one of these is you pop it in here, you turn it over, you get one of these, sorry, off this side, and you screw it on, and you just screw all the buttons to the front of the cabinet, sorry, to the front of the plate. So what I'm going to do is now is I'm going to go and screw all these in, and then we'll talk about how we're going to encode them and wire them up. So that's all the buttons screwed in now. Now we've got to do the joysticks. And the joysticks, they're a little bit different. They're much better quality than the ones we were previously using. But if you put them in the center, the holes don't quite match up. So you've got to realign the holes by doing another pilot hole and just screwing the existing screws that you used. Now the joysticks have been done. So now all the joysticks have been screwed in. So they're all done. The encoder's now been stuck on, and I've started to wire up the board. If we flip around now, you can see the joysticks are all in place, all the buttons are in place, everything's all screwed in. We've got player 1, we've got player 2. Now if we flip this over, what I'm going to show you is I've started to wire up. Now button 1, which we're going to call this as an example, button 1, must be put into, doesn't have to be, but I've used the first port on the encoder. This is the important bit. The same has to apply for what we call button 1. That side has to go in the same sides here. If you don't, you can have issues when you're mapping your buttons, and it's the same here. So if we do this button, we'll do the second slot. It has to correspond with this side. So this button would then go into this slot, and you map them all up to the same wiring on the encoder board. And then I'll come back to you when it's all done. All the wiring has been completed. So every single button has now got a slot on the encoder. Also player 1's got a slot on the encoder. Also player 2's got a slot on the encoder. And both joysticks have now been, they're a 5-pinner, and they connect to the bottom of the encoder in the 5-pin there. We've also got the wiring which into the encoder, and this is a nice lengthy wire with USB, and it'll go into the Raspberry Pi. So that's that all sorted. That just needs slotting onto the arcade now. We've also got the speaker here. Now some amps come with this connector, so you can slot your speaker straight into the amp. With me it doesn't, so I'm just going to have to splice the wire there and have to wire it into the amp separately. So on the front of the Arcade1Up, I'm going to drill 2 holes to put the 2 coin buttons. As you can see, I've done 2 pilot holes now, and there we have it. The 2 coin buttons in the front of the Arcade1Up are now in place, and they're screwed in. All I need to do now is wire them up and attach them to the front of the Arcade1Up. Let's get to it. Okay, now it's time. We're in the back of the cabinet now. So I've put the controllers, the joysticks and the buttons, that's all being plugged back in. I haven't tested it yet. Now we're just going to take this off, which is where the current ROMs are stored. Unscrew these 4 screws as well to get at it. So let's get into this. So okay, that's now off. So if we just have a little look, we've got an earth, we've got, just unplug this bit here now, get this out, and we'll take this off here. Time to get this off. So that is everything that ran. That's basically the arcade. I'm going to plug my board in, which will then convert it to HDMI, and then this will run into the Raspberry Pi. So the earth will go here, so we'll get that sorted, and then we're going to attach this somewhere down here. We'll attach it here or something. We'll get that sorted. So first things first, we're gonna, on this board that we've got here, we'll just move this way here so you can see. We're gonna plug the monitor, current monitor, into here. That goes into there, and then you'll see on this, you'll see this strip here which will plug into here, but the red wires go to the left. Got to make sure that you wire it up the right way, or you're going to have issues. So we just plug that there with the wires to the left, and finally we just need to earth the whole thing, whole unit. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to use off that other cabinet, that little hole there, so that I'm going to throw that onto there, and then we use the bracket that we used off the other, and we're just going to screw that onto here. Okay, so now we've put the control board in. I've used the power that I used to control this, I've now just used straight onto that, so that saved us 12 volts, having to go out and buy another adapter. HDMI is now plugged in, and now we're using this little bad boy here, and this is the Raspberry Pi 4, which has got 1.5 gigahertz, which can be overclocked to 2.2, and it also has 4 gigabytes of RAM. We've got the power supply that goes in here. I've now got a mini HDMI that runs from here and goes to here, and then the control switches, when we did the joysticks and the buttons and I showed you where the wires, I put them up to now in these 2 USB ports. They might need to be changed around when we come to button mapping, so fingers crossed when we apply power to this now, we're gonna get the system should boot up, fingers crossed. But all we need to do now is hook up the 12 volt amp. So I'm going to wire the amp up now. So what I'm going to do there, I'm just going to leave this, the Raspberry Pi 4, just on the floor here. We have bought this little bad boy here, and this cost just a couple of quid off Amazon. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to chop the wire up. I'm going to put one in here, one in here. Then we've got a power source which we'll put up here, and I'm probably going to screw this round about here. I was going to stick it on, but I think the weight might be a little bit too much. I think I'm going to have to screw it onto the side of the cabinet, and then that will control the sound. It'll give it a really nice crisp sound to the arcade cabinet. So where we have it, it's now complete. So we have the amp with the speaker, the yellow speaker going into the back of the amp. We have a power supply coming from the amp going into the power block, and we also have an AUX lead coming from the back of the amp into the control panel here. So we have the Raspberry Pi hooked up, we've got the control panel hooked up, we've got power going to that, we've got the HDMI connected. The last thing to do is fire it up and see if it all works. And there you have it. Let's just see if all the buttons will map up. Let's see if everything will load the way it wanted to. That to me is absolutely spot on. And here we have it. It is up and running. So I've got 2,701 games. We've got favourites. We've got arcade classics, Naomi, Neo Geo, Neo Geo CD, Beats of Rage, Atari classics, baseball, basketball, bowling, boxing, beat 'em up, Capcom, Data East, Double Dragon, football, golf, hockey. We've got the King of Fighters, Naomi classics, light gun games, Midway classics, Mortal Kombat, Namco classics, Nintendo classics. We've got Virtual Man's Arcade, we've got pinball, we've got racing, we've got Sega classics, SNK classics, soccer, Street Fighter, Taito classics, tennis, trackball, and then all games, 2,701 games. And there we have the full conversion, everything there, done and dusted. Fully converted now, as you can tell. The LED lights of the controls and the joysticks, plus we've got LEDs around the back, giving it a really nice moonlighting, nice look to it. And as we just click on, we go to here, and you can see there's loads and loads of games. If we just go to favorites, let's click into there, gives you an idea. There's hundreds and hundreds, well, thousands of games to go through. And that is my video complete. I really hope you've enjoyed this video. Please give us a like. If anyone's interested in one of these and you don't want to do it again, I am available to build one of these cabinets for you if you want one done. Like the video, subscribe if you want to see more like this. Thank you for watching.